The Richard Roeper Show is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios. The digital landscape is changing rapidly, and to compete in today's online business environment, you need that experienced partner. Since 1995, AmericanEagle.com has partnered with companies of all sizes, offering web design, web development, e-commerce, mobile apps, and digital marketing, all to drive your overall business's success because they believe that today's online world is your online opportunity. Visit AmericanEagle.com to get started today. That's AmericanEagle.com, AmericanEagle.com. All right, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. You could say this just about every week. It's been a crazy week and a lot of things happening in the news, but particularly so this week. And I know you come here for pop culture talk and lifestyle talk and obviously reviews and discussions of all things movies and television, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm just going to say this at the outset before we do get into entertainment news, and I've got some reviews for you. When something happens in the news that has everybody talking on social media, a cataclysmic event or a murder, a huge political development, a scandal, whatever the case may be, and everybody likes to weigh in on it, whether you're a professional commentator or some sort of social or political figure, or, just somebody who wants to weigh in on it. And that's one of the great things about this democracy, that you have every right to do that. But just a cautionary tale, and we saw that play out again this week. What I always tell people, and I haven't always followed my own advice about taking a deep breath before jumping in with opinions or deciding that you're going to take this event and immediately pivot to what your beliefs are, which you have, again, every right to express. But I always remind people that nobody has ever been fired or lost relationships or become estranged from their family and friends by virtue of something they didn't tweet, something they didn't post on Facebook, something they didn't say in a parking lot while somebody was recording it on their iPhone. So sometimes it might be just best to take a step back and take a deep breath, think about what you want to say publicly, and in some cases, maybe withhold comment. There are going to be other people that are going to weigh in, and you have every right. Again, you know this. Every right to express your opinion. But again, too, we have to keep in mind when people talk about free speech, and I've built my entire career on the privilege of free speech. But when you say certain things and you cross certain lines, you have every right to say that, and other people have the right to react to it. And that might include bosses and colleagues and friends and et cetera. And I'm not trying to be obtuse here or vague. It's got nothing to do with me, but we saw, in one case in the aftermath of the murder of Charlie Kirk, and a commentator for MSNBC losing their job for things they said. But I also see a lot of people saying things, and I did see someone else say something very wise on Twitter. They're like, a lot of these posts I'm seeing, maybe that should be a text thread or conversation privately with your friends, if you want to express these things. Just something to keep in mind, that sometimes it's best to take that deep breath and think about how what you say is probably not going to change anyone's mind, but might reflect on you and your character, and maybe not always in the best way. Okay, I just stepped off the soapbox and talking now about, we're going to talk now a little bit about what's happening in the world of entertainment. And this was a big week for the Charlie Sheen Redemption Tour. I'm sure if you follow this kind of thing, and if you don't, you're probably not listening to this podcast. So we have the new memoir, The Book of Sheen, Charlie Sheen's life story in his own words, and then also AKA Charlie Sheen, which is the 2-part documentary now playing on Netflix, and a lot to unpack and talk about here. I wanted to share with you guys a couple of my experiences in the entertainment journalism world and covering Charlie Sheen. So anyway, as you know, Charlie Sheen's got the book out. There's all these revelations in there, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the documentary, which I watched and I reviewed. You can get my written review at rogerebert.com of AKA Charlie Sheen. But a couple of personal anecdotes. I pulled up some old quotes and collections and interviews of mine. I interviewed Charlie Sheen a couple of times over the years. One that I was immediately reminded of some 25 years down the road, guys, is in the summer of 1990. And this was when I was I was still doing a lot of news columns and was going to continue to do so, but also on weekends for the Sunday showcase section for the Sun Times, I was doing a lot of entertainment related stuff. And that included a lot of interviews where I would be flown up to Los Angeles, New York, various other locales to either participate in junkets, press junkets, where there's 100 different reporters rotated in and out, like you saw in Notting Hill. Or, I'd be privileged enough to get a little bit more time, maybe spend a day with somebody or an afternoon interviewing various celebrities. And it was very cool, at the time for me as someone who I'd been in the business for 5 or 6 years, but in my late 20s and early 30s, getting to interview Paul Newman and Jack Lemmon and Sean Connery, and then up and comers like young Julia Roberts and stars, Meryl Streep, Shirley MacLaine, so many. I had so many great opportunities, especially to interview legends who are no longer with us. One of my first interviews I ever got to do was with Walter Matthau. I couldn't believe I was interviewing these great actors who I'd grown up watching, and then peers, age-wise, I mean, and then even younger stars. So in 1990, Charlie Sheen, he'd already been through a lot. By that point, he'd burst on the scene. He had that memorable cameo in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and then he starred in 2 huge Oscar-winning blockbusters, Wall Street and Platoon, and he was already starting to get the party reputation. So in 1990, he was promoting. I was flown to Los Angeles to interview him. He was promoting a movie called Navy SEALs. It was a military thriller, kind of corny, old school. Michael Biehn, remember Michael Biehn, of course, terrific actor. Yeah, still doing good stuff, but probably best known from the first Terminator movie. This is the way I described it at the time. Charlie Sheen is smoking a cigarette and drinking from a tall smoked glass containing something refreshing and orange. He's wearing a screaming blue pinstripe suit with wide lapels and a yellow Dick Tracy style fedora. Gold bracelets jangle on his wrists and diamond rings twinkle on his fingers. It is not a subtle look. This is, by the way, I credit to the Sun Times. That's where this article appeared, of course, my home newspaper for all those years. So I described in the interview, which was kind of all over the place. He's clearly in not a great place himself, and asked to describe his character. Very simple. He played a reckless free spirit who was into fighting and kind of, the classic kind of rebel without a cause who's in the Navy SEALs. And his answer was, you want me to describe I'm not going to imitate Charlie Sheen. This is from an interview, but I'm not going to imitate him. You want me to describe the character. Describe the character. Well, you saw the movie. Then why should I describe the character? And I mentioned in the article, he was talking like a Damon Runyon character. Later, I talked to him about, he was engaged to Kelly Preston, the late Kelly Preston. And then there was this shooting incident where, as the story finally came out, he had, I think, a small gun in a pair of trousers, and when she went to pick up the trousers, the gun fell out and discharged, and Kelly was hit with a ricochet, I believe, and sustained some injuries, but nothing terribly serious. But obviously, it was one of many strange chapters in Charlie Sheen's life. And again, he's pretty young here at this point. He's an up and comer, right? Who would at this point become a big star. And here's what he told me about the relationship and the breakup. He said, I was engaged for 1 year, 2 months, and 1 hour, and then the whole thing just fell apart. I went Elvis on the whole deal. When I say I went Elvis, you know what I'm saying. I kind of I don't want to say any more than that. You know what I'm saying. I just went Elvis. About 3 weeks after that interview, on Martin Sheen's birthday, Charlie Sheen went to his father's house for what he thought was a birthday party, and it was an intervention, and he went to rehab. And that's all well documented in the documentary, AKA Charlie Sheen, which goes through his youth growing up in Malibu, which at the time was a little bit more of a rural, if you will, community neighborhoods, even though his dad was an actor, and was doing well. They didn't live in this big mansion. It was a neighborhood, and Charlie and his siblings, including, of course, his brother Emilio, and they were friends with Sean and Chris Penn, and I know Rob Lowe was in that group. And we get to see these cool home movies they're doing. And then, the documentary takes us through his whole rise and the various setbacks and rehabs and tumultuous relationships. And it's a 2-parter. So when they get to part 2, it's amazing to me because part 1, you're already like, how is this man still alive? As Charlie says in the on-camera present day interviews he does for the documentary, But a lot of the second part of the documentary is about that whole infamous, crazy um, 2000s and early 2010s period when Charlie went off the rails and left Two and a Half Men, was fired from Two and a Half Men, and did those crazy winning, remember winning and Tiger Blood and all that stuff, those crazy videos and all these crazy interviews he was doing.
Some are saying that you're bipolar.
Wow, what does that mean?
I guess that, you're on two ends of the spectrum.
Wow, and then what? What's the cure? Medicine? Make me like them? Not gonna happen. I'm by winning. I win here and I win there. Now what?
And one of the strangest things was he did this Torpedo of Truth, I think it was called, tour, the Torpedo of Truth live tour, where he went to like Madison Square Garden and, big events like that, doing this live tour. And so this is the second article I wanted to share. So this was April 4th, 2011. So this is 20 years after that 1990 interview with Charlie Sheen. I went to the show, such as it were, at the Chicago Theater. And here's what I wrote at the time. The show, such as it was, consisted of Sheen and a gum-chewing, unfunny Joey Scolari, his manager and tour co-producer, on stage with the guitarist. There was some audience participation, as when Sheen exchanged shirts with a burly, back-haired guy, and when a few goddess wannabes, remember he had those goddesses, he called them, that were living with him, made apparently drunken attempts to get his attention. But for the most part, it was Sheen smoking and rambling. And he told some stories and then kind of just walked off at one point. It is just a disaster. So to get into the documentary, as I mentioned, and I'm giving it 2.5 stars. And again, you could read the full written review at rogerebert.com. It's a 2-part documentary that has a running time of about 3 hours. And I think that's why I gave it 2.5 stars and not 3 stars. One of the main reasons. Even Charlie Sheen might say that's a lot of Charlie Sheen. And I think they could have benefited from some judicious editing. Not to say that there isn't an amazing amount of, you've got movie clips, TV clips, the home movie footage with Charlie and Emilio and the Penn brothers making these little home movies, and clips from Martin Sheen's movies, and all these crazy meltdown things, and then present day interviews where and Charlie Sheen's father, Martin Sheen, and Emilio Estevez's brother declined to participate in the documentary. The relationships are we're told, good now, but they just thought Charlie should tell his story, and we don't need to jump in on this. But John Cryer, his co-star in Two and a Half Men, participates. Denise Richards and Brooke Muller, 2 of his ex-wives, are in there, and several other people who are key figures in his life. And Charlie Sheen himself, who's 60 now, has been sober for 8 years, and God bless. He has this terrible illness, and addiction is probably everybody who's listening to this right now is nodding their head, sadly saying they know somebody or themselves have been, taken in by this and suffered the consequences of addiction. So, we wish him best. He's coming back, and I think he's looking at some projects to do, and we wish him all the best. Again, the documentary, I don't have this luxury when I'm reviewing stuff. Obviously, I got to watch the whole thing, but you guys might want to watch it and kind of skip around a little bit. It is fascinating stuff. It's amazing that Charlie Sheen is still with us. And Sean Penn is another participant in the documentary, and he says that exact same thing. So what an incredible life. Charlie Sheen has done a lot of good work, and we wish him the best in the years to come. Going to take a break and talk about Portillo's, and then we got a couple of other reviews for you guys. All right, we're going to talk about Portillo's. You guys know the drill here. They're known for their famous Chicago hot dogs with all the famous correct Chicago ingredients, right down to that poppy seed bun. But there's so much more. They got great burgers. You can get Italian sausage, Italian beef, amazing French fries, also some really good salads. Don't shortchange the salads at Portillo's. And then, of course, you top it off with the legendary, the one and only chocolate cake. I know people who order the entire cake for birthdays and other occasions, but you can also get a slice, which will probably last you 2 helpings because it's amazing. And always, of course, you keep the cake at room temperature. That's how they do it at Portillo's. That's how you want to consume it. Now, there are Portillo's in many locations across the country, but you can also order online and ship it via Portillos.com. You can find a location near you, order online. Portillos, Portillos.com, Portillos.com.
It's hard to accept that it's time to go. Your friendship has never been more important to all of us. But the future of Downton Abbey is now in Mary's hands.
You will be a sensation.
Welcome back, my brother.
Cora,
The news is bad, isn't it?
how could you tell?
I've known you since you were born.
Hal's made a real mess of things, hasn't he?
Don't you see what this means for Downton?
Long live Downton Abbey. Amen to that.
Okay, that is, of course, you probably recognize those voices. Downton Abbey, the grand finale, the third movie in the Downton Abbey franchise. And this is it. This is it for Julian Fellowes. Classic, legendary story. You know, it goes back 15 years now to Downton Abbey premiering, I guess, in Britain first, right? In Great Britain and England, and then coming to the United States. And I remember when Downton Abbey premiered, and, you know, there was a show called Upstairs, Downstairs that had the same kind of approach years ago, which was a huge hit on PBS. And I knew Julian Fellowes' work, wonderful, wonderful performer and writer and creator. I can't say that I was like so excited to see it, but the premiere episode of Downton Abbey, you know, it's so well done and beautifully filmed, and the famous theme, and it kicks off with news reaching Downton Abbey of the sinking of the Titanic, and that set off all these fictional plot lines that were set in a real world and against a real world backdrop. So when World War I happened, that became a part of the story, the Jazz Age, and eventually, you know, Hollywood coming to Downton Abbey as it did in one of the movies. And so it followed this timeline and took us all the way from about a 15-year period. And I loved the series, and the series ended, you know, on a great note of closure. And a lot of the characters were like, okay, that's probably where they should be, and we wish them the best. But it, you know, it was so popular, they decided to do the movie, and then the second film, and then now we have the grand finale. And I will say this: watching the film a few weeks ago in the screening room on a quiet morning in Chicago, I was immediately lost again in the characters and the situations, and just about everybody, unless they passed away. We've lost some people over the years, of course, is back for the finale. It's just great seeing them all. And I was sad at the end. First of all, there's a very, you know, emotional, sentimental, beautiful ending to the film, but also the fact that we weren't going to spend any more time with these characters. I'd be up for, and you know, the movie, it's 3 stars for me, maybe 3.5, because I love the franchise so much. And it really just plays like a few more episodes of the series, but that's okay, because the series was gorgeously done, and great crisp writing and incredible costumes and sets and just wonderful ensemble acting. You could tell these actors really leaned into these characters. They knew they had been written characters. Just for one example, Michelle Dockery with Lady Mary, who could be insufferable, but also wonderful and strong, and really representing, you know, the rise of women in this, you know, old school England. And we're reminded that it's still a very old fashioned time, because in Downton Abbey, the grand finale, the character of Lady Mary is getting a divorce. It's actually, we find out she's got a divorce from her bounder of a husband. But at the time, that means she's a pariah in society. And that could mean the whole family is, you know, excluded from all those crazy events. And as usual, you know, it's interesting because, of course, you know, the household, the manor, there are all those, the wonderful downstairs employees, who we got to know just as well as the upstairs, downstairs. And there's a whole economy, you know, the farms and everything around, you know, that community springs from what's happening at Downton Abbey. It was an economy. It created jobs, but they were always worried about money from the very start, because it was like, who are we going to inherit money from? How are we going to fix the roof? Well, now we're out of money. How are we going to, and that, once again, they're facing possible financial ruin, and they, you know, a lot of fun with that. And we get, you know, we catch up with everybody who we've loved from the show. And as I mentioned, the last 2 or 3 minutes, just beautifully done. And yes, it's probably time for the franchise to end and let the actors, and they've gone on, in between projects to do other things and put a bow in it. But if they decided that they were going to do Downton, and I'm not big on the reboots and sequels, guys. But if Julian Fellows or other people of that ilk, some of the people involved in the original series, if they decided somewhere down the lane to do Downton Abbey, the next generation, set it like, so this one ends in the early 30s. What if you picked it up in the 50s and 60s? Kind of like they did with The Crown, where they kept going through the generations, but you could have Lady Mary, and whether she's played by Michelle Dockery or somebody else, but what if Lady Mary is now 65 or 70 and the kids are grown up and there's a whole new set of problems and generational things and adjusting with the times and dealing with the changes of the world? That would be pretty great, right? Anyway, Downton Abbey, the grand finale in theaters as we speak. Also want to make a mention of The Long Walk, which is based on a Stephen King book. I think he wrote that one under the Richard Bachman. Is that his pseudonym?
Warning.
Okay, just keep walking. That's right. Just keep walking.
Yeah, that's it, kid, that's it. Keep walking. Go on, Charlie, get out, get out.
Second warning. Third warning.
It takes heavy sack to sign up for this contest. I'm not gonna go through the whole rule book, but it boils down to this. If you fall below the speed of 3 miles per hour, you get your ticket. Walk until there's only one of you left. Who's ready to win?
Yeah, it took me a while to realize the truth of this. This is walk or die.
Oh, this is good. Really intense. The premise of The Long Walk is it's set in the obligatory dystopian future, right? And every year they do this lottery, supposedly to improve morale in the country, which I don't think it's really we're doing a great job of that. And 50 young men are chosen for a lottery and they go on a long walk and they have to keep walking. And if they go under 3 miles an hour, or if they stop, they lose their ticket, which means they are summarily executed. So you got these 50 guys on this long walk and only one's going to make it. And there were parts of it where I thought, okay, how are they going to keep this movie going? Just really a couple of flashbacks and sidebars, but basically it's just The Long Walk. But that's what makes it so intense and so nerve-wracking. And the dialogue is kind of stylized, and you can almost see the Stephen King dialogue on the page, that almost like a clipped, stylized tone of dialogue like you'd get in a movie set in the 50s. And I think that's on purpose. And the young cast, they're all terrific. It's really intense. Man, they really don't shy away from the violence. And, there was a quote from Stephen King about how they don't show the violence in a lot of the superhero movies. And he found that to be almost pornographic. And people were like, this from the guy who does all these violent movies. And I think that the quote was misinterpreted by some, or misunderstood. Or maybe they just understood it and didn't like it. But I get what Stephen King was saying. And I've talked about this, that sometimes in movies like the Fast and Furious franchise, at the end when Dom, that they're having the barbecue, and it's always about family and all that stuff. And they talk about family and friendship and bonding. And it's like, you guys just went on a bunch of high-speed chases where there were cars and trucks scattered all over the highway. Don't you think some innocent people who have families of their own might have been injured or even killed? And of course, in the superhero movies, it's well known, the trope, you see this, it's because it's usually PG-13, right? The violence. So, an entire city is destroyed, or many blocks of a city. And we see buildings smashing and explosions and large chunks of the streets torn to pieces as the superheroes are involved in the CGI battles. But we're always seeing like the little girl just narrowly avoiding the bus, or the family that escapes. But people are clearly killed in these giant epic battles, and it's not shown, or it's stylized, or it's sanitized, or it's barely referenced. So what Stephen King was saying, in The Long Walk, here's your warning in advance. When someone is killed, the camera, we do not cut to the next scene. We do not cut to reaction shots. We do not pull away. So in a way, it's like, well, this is real. This is what the violence is like. I wanted to mention one more entry. This is a Prime Video series called The Girlfriend.
My son always had girlfriends, but I have never heard him speak about anyone like this.
Darling, she is going to love you. Such a beautiful home.
Mum, this is Cherry.
Hello. Wow.
What do you think?
It's unusual. Is it a Caspian Alexander?
It is.
It's gentle, but violent.
She looked me dead in the eye.
Are you sure you're not imagining that?
She's digging into my life. Have you forgotten what she did to me?
It's my mom.
You have to choose one of us.
I'm your son. You will have to let him go.
He's all I've got.
Let me tell you about my daughter. When she has her sights set on something, you better not interfere.
And Amazon Prime Video, psychological thriller. And again, you can get a full written take on this at rogerebert.com. This is the genre I've dubbed the CRWW. That's the crazy rich white woman entry in the world of entertainment. We've had so many of these limited series and also in feature films. And here's my partial roster for you. Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon and Laura Dern in Big Little Lies, Jessica Chastain in The Forgiven, Blake Lively in the Simple Favor movies, Jessica Biel in The Better Sister, Julianne Moore in Sharper and Sirens in May, December, and Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman is the absolute goat, because you got Big Little Lies, and then you got The Undoing and Nine Perfect Strangers and Expats and The Perfect Couple and Baby Girl. So you get these, these lurid limited series or feature films, almost always based on best-selling books from the last 15 years or so. And people who are living these, it seems like these crazy rich white women are living the perfect life. They're always in these giant homes, and there's usually a summer home as well, or a villa somewhere. A lot of times they're married. Most times they're married. Sometimes they're already divorced, but they got the seemingly, the handsome, wealthy husband and the beautiful children and the servants, and they have powerful positions in the professional world. It seems like they have it all. And of course, they never have it all. It's all falling apart. They either have financial troubles, or they're having an affair, or the husband's having an affair, or something's going to go wrong. And then a lot of times there's murder. There's at least scandal, but sometimes there's even murder. So in The Girlfriend, Robin Wright plays Laura. She's a wealthy art gallery owner who's got this kind of crazy reverse Oedipal fixation on her son, Daniel, played by Laurie Davidson. And he's a medical student in his last year, and she just doesn't think anybody's good enough for her son. And along comes this girl named Cherry Lane, if you believe it. Cherry Lane, played by Olivia Cook, who's wonderful. And Laura immediately thinks she is a social climber. I don't trust her. She's trying to steal my son from me. And then the girlfriend changes points of view between the character of Cherry and Laura. And it's like, which one of these two are crazy, as they are in this psychological tug of war for the son and the boyfriend, depending on the point of view, the affections and the loyalties. And it just goes batshit crazy. And there's one major plot twist halfway through that this just makes absolutely zero sense, but either go with it or you don't. And I did. 3 stars for The Girlfriend. It's real estate porn. It's fashion porn. It's production design porn. It's wildly entertaining, if not subtle acting porn. And it is another entry in the crazy rich white woman genre, which is almost always very entertaining, and you just go with it, right? Oh, one last thing I wanted to mention before I say goodbye. I want to thank everybody. I've been getting a lot of feedback lately on the podcast. You can email me at richardroeper2025@gmail.com. My full name, Richard, and then ROEPER, all lowercase, 2025@gmail.com. And I've been getting some great emails from you guys. I'm not going to mention names here because I don't want anybody to say, well, you shouldn't have mentioned me, but I'll say first name's Rustin. Loved your episode from last couple of weeks ago now, about workplace sitcoms. I would just add one more to your list, the Bob Newhart Show. I love Bob's office and his interactions with his patients and his secretary. Yes, I agree. That's really cool. Recently in my hometown here of Chicago, they named a block after Bob Newhart in Edgewater, because that's where he lived with Emily, his wife. Another one, this is from Norm, who's in Texas, who says, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. Thank you. Really enjoy your reviews and enjoying the podcast. By the way, I'm not going to read any emails where they tell me I'm an idiot, right? You realize that. And there really weren't any like that recently. There have been quite a few over the years. Anyway, this Norm says, enjoy your reviews. As far as workplace comedies, how about Barney Miller? That show was very funny. Absolutely. I agree. Wendy from Chicago, the podcast is great, but every time I listen to it, you make me want to go to Portillo's. You need to add commercials for Ozempic. Ha, 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 Wendy says. That's not me reacting. Anyway, Sophia G., look forward every Friday to your podcast. Hint 2 a week would be nice. Thank you. We might explore that. So I really do. I appreciate the feedback. And even I know it's been a long time since I mentioned any of it on the podcast, but I do read all the emails that are sent to me. Richard Roeper 2025@gmail.com. That's going to do it for this week's podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will talk soon. Thanks, guys.